A few years ago, I was on a location scout here on Svalbard with PolarX for a Hollywood feature film. At the time, I could not mention the title due to it being a work in progress. On that boat location scout, we did not find the perfect location, but we did manage to investigate possible areas and map out the logistics concerns for the team from PolarX that was planning the Hollywood invasion to the high Arctic. Now I'm back on Svalbard to meet with Jason Roberts from PolarX to hear about the massive logistics it took to serve the filming.
That's flashing 331.
And the safety concerns for such a large action feature film crew shooting in the high Arctic. And to reveal the title of the Hollywood feature film I was location scouting for, Mission Impossible: The Final Reckoning.
So, Morten, now the title is out.
Now the title is out. And first of all, thank you for having me, Jason, and taking your time.
Well, thank you for visiting PolarX. Yeah. It's always a pleasure.
So, I remember I was out visiting some friends. We were having dinner, and suddenly the phone was ringing in my pocket, and it was Jason Roberts. And you were, can't remember the words exactly, but it was something like, "Do you have a week or so that available?" And I was like, "Yeah, for what?" And you were like, "Oh, we're doing some location scouting for Mission Impossible, the last movie they're making, and our drone pilot is ill. So I wonder if you could fly the drone on this location scout." And I was like, "Yeah, definitely. But when is it?" And you say, "Tomorrow morning you have to meet at the boat." Do you remember that?
I think there was a slightly, when you say Jason from PolarX called you, you forgot the word stressed. Jason called you at the last minute. Yeah, we did have some. You were here. We got common friends, very close friends. So I thought it was also a great opportunity for you to see what we're doing.
Definitely.
It's very hard to explain the immense size of these projects. It's really difficult for people to understand what's involved in such a lot of work, and in that chance it was great for you to get out. I remember mostly you ringing me about, I rang you and you had to think about changing your flights, and you think about it. I think it was 3.5 seconds before the phone rang again and said, "I'm coming."
Yeah. Yes.
I don't think you'd fixed anything. You just decided, "I'm coming."
Yeah.
And then that night you kept asking, "Do you need to bring freeze-dried food? Do you need to bring your tent? Do you need to bring a sleeping bag?" I was like, for Christ, we're on a ship. Yeah. So just get there in the morning.
Yeah, and that's the thing. I had at that time I had not seen your ship, the Polar Explorer, and I was thinking like, I don't know, some kind of old rusty ship. And we were going north, and I thought, probably I'm just sleeping somewhere in my sleeping bag and have to boil freeze-dried food, and then when we arrive to the ship, oh my goodness.
Yeah, it's quite a luxury ship and everything. But of course, in such a big operation, it's a lot to do with safety, not only logistics, but safety for the crew. And you were trying to push up to the pack ice, up to right up to 80 degrees, 81 degrees in the middle of winter conditions, and minus 30, I think it was about then. So it was freezing cold. And
and these of you who actually saw that movie with the location scout, you saw that we were challenged by really low temperatures, very hard wind, like hitting the ship, and the wave was hitting the ship from the front. So we had this over-icing issues. But that's also what I'm so excited about, because when I came home from that trip, I think it was a 7-day or something, I can't remember exactly, but we did not find a usable location. And true. The only thing I faintly remember was that shortly after I left, there was like almost an invasion of people from Hollywood coming over, and I'm quite excited to actually hear about what, like, first of all, how big is such a project?
On the location scouting that you were on, which was one of the final locations, but you have to go back earlier.
Yeah.
This type of operation normally goes over quite a few years. First, it's a rough idea of a script or editorial or a look of the image, and then maybe then, so a few years earlier, there was still images and a bit of motion pictures sent over to the director, and then we discuss with the director what type of look he wants, what type of because everyone has their own idea what it's like.
Yeah.
And then trying to convey, well, yeah, that is a beautiful picture of ice, but you can't put an aircraft on that ice, or you can't put people on that ice.
No.
So there's also the practicality side. So you have the script side, editorial side, what they desire on the film, and then you have the logistics side, is it possible, and the safety side, how to do it in a safe way with so many people that are really being taken out of their normal environment and put out in the high Arctic, which is our working environment.
Yeah.
So actually before your Scout, we'd been banging ideas backwards and forwards for over a 2-year period. And then by the time you did your Scout, we were in full actual production for shooting. So we had the whole invasion of Hollywood coming no matter what. And then slightly different filming, maybe sea ice locations mostly than other places on the globe, is you're actually on a surface that's changing. So when you went on the scouting, we was just getting the really cold winter period, and the sea ice was just forming.
Yeah.
So we had to take that into consideration. When you did the Scout, and we didn't have the exact location, we knew what type of look of location they wanted. And that meant that I could just basically go, okay, you like that look there? Okay, that probably won't freeze in time, but this location here is accessible for logistics, and it looks the same, roughly.
Oh, so it was not completely unusual what I made?
No, it wasn't at all.
Good.
Yeah, and basically you come back with the drone footage showing what location that they actually like the look of.
Yeah.
And then we could say, if you had found a location that was so far away that it would be too costly logistically, we would say, okay, that location's great, but we have pretty much the same match just around the corner.
Yeah.
To save logistics and save costs and all the other issues involved. So actually from your Scout, it was quite successful Scout. We continued on and jumped in some aircraft because we knew the look we were looking for, and then we did aerial surveys too. And the aerial surveys was not looking for the look that you discovered. We now know the look, so we have these options, and we need to know if the ice is thick enough for the operation to take our weight for safety. Because you can remember the guys jumping off the ship on the ice. It looks a bit crazy when you just come banging in the side of some ice and don't bang into it, because we can break ice with the ship, but if it's the thickness of the ice we need to go on to is quite thick. So I think you were probably shocked when a couple of the guys from PolarX just jump on the ice and run across with a drill and start drilling here and there. But it's all thought through, and we're all trying to think of the consistency of ice, the thickness of the ice, and then eventually, we did find a good frozen bays where we could put the whole massive operation to the ice edge and film.
No, and how and how do you secure the ship then so it doesn't float away?
So securing the ship, of course, the ship is a big sail in the wind, and often in a glacial bay you'll have a downfall wind off the glacier. So you always have offshore winds or off the ice wind. Yeah. So the ship wants to pull away from the ice. So it is an issue. The biggest problem is actually swell coming in under the ice and breaking up the ice with swell. So what we do is we use basically post hole diggers, like drills. You would drill a hole for putting a post up, a fence up, a post up. We drill that and we put oak. White oak is very strong wood, so we put. You don't put steel in it normally. You can use steel, but steel tends to, if it gets a bit of sun on it, the steel gets warm and it melts, it falls to the bottom of the ocean. So we basically put mooring poles in the shipping terminology, which is a pole in the ice, and then put the rope around it and tie to the side of the ice like we're tying a ship to a wharf. There's a lot of pressure on those poles.
But also I guess the ice needs to be very thick, or what, to do that with the pole?
With the pole, it needs to be, depends on the wind onto the ice edge and that, but it has to be at least 40, 50 centimeters to have any force to hold. Normally, actually, the ice is so strong, if the ice is in a formation form, not retreating, actually melting basically, it is so strong, it's stronger than the pole. So we would normally, it's not often the ice breaks, it's actually the wood pole snaps. because there's a lot of force in a big ship like that.
Yeah.
And that is the danger, of course, of those tender lines going to the ice. It's no different than on a wharf. You don't want to be standing next to them when the line snaps, because they go like a whip.
Yeah. So one thing is the location. I felt I was on a big mission, but when I came home, I figured out that was just like a drop in the ocean compared, just because you showed me some photos just before this chat of the ships and a lot of people running around. Like, I mean, how many people came up here? And
so of course it's always fluctuating the size, but when you went out on your location scout, you were a little bit shocked by the operation, and you thought, this is massive and we're doing so much. And actually we'd already been location scouting with helicopter the year before that and the year before that. So I think we'd done 5 location scouts beforehand at different times of year and different seasons. Do they want a summer look? Do they want a winter look? Do they want a frozen look? Do they want a darker look, a lighter look? What time is the light? Because we're so far north in the high Arctic, we do also have massive changes in angles of light. So we've done light studies. We've been to locations where we basically studied the light around the whole 24 hours at different periods to work out if we could do it. We'd LiDAR scanned areas where we could rebuild the locations in the studio afterwards. So, and then when the operation starts, it's like an invasion. We were just under, I think at the most, we're about 295 people directly involved.
Like out there?
Out there, 293 people was the most. That's including all the ship's crew, the 3 ships we had. So we have a hotel ship to house everyone. We have a offshore supply vessel, which is basically all the toys, all the equipment. Which on board that ship was over 70 shipping containers of equipment. And then we also had the Polar Explorer, so we could go off and scout the next location. Because every time we're shooting a location, you always have to think that you might be shooting something, but you already have to have the next one prepped and ready. And by the time you actually start shooting on that location, often you start shooting, but the prep team is then working on the de-rigging of that location, because it's going to flip ahead. So you're always flipping ahead, which is very hard to calculate how many people you need to do that, because it is quite depressive when you spend, like on this here, we spend over 6 weeks with construction, building locations. And we start shooting. We're only shooting for 3 to 5 days on a set normally. So the first day of shooting, everyone is shooting, and then my job is, okay, how we start de-rigging this? So you haven't even started before you're discussing pulling it down, which is can be fairly a deprimentive feeling at times. You go, oh, so much work for this, and we're already talking about how we're going to take it down. So in this form here, we were about just under 300 people, 290 people, where about 40 people working directly with the logistics, and probably another 40 are working just with shipping or aviation, and we have about 200 people that are working just on the film production side. But then we have all the sub-providers, the suppliers, and that adds a lot of people to it. So if we're 290, 300 people, there's at least another 200 people. The bakeries baking bread for us, the transport companies clearing snow for us, the airports open for our charter planes coming in. There is a whole village of people on the sides helping out.
I'm thinking you're going to film this actor, in this case, the Tom Cruise, for the Mission Impossible movie.
And all the other mission actors were involved in this sequence. So most of them were involved in the sequences shot in the Arctic. So it's quite a lot of cast.
But from there to being so many people involved and all these ships, and like, what kind of equipment did you need to bring, just to understand? Like, I could guess you need a place to eat, and you need a toilet. That's the basics, and a place to sleep there.
Yeah. So you need to house people. You need and when we're shooting remote location, that means you have to have toilet facilities for everyone. The good thing in the Arctic is it doesn't smell so bad.
Yeah.
Actually, it freezes pretty quickly. But
Yeah.
the other thing is it freezes quickly. So what do you do with it?
Yeah.
So there's all those challenges that we've worked with for years. And it's actually probably the biggest challenge is getting the mindset to understand the size.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know, and also the other way. And we went from shooting Mission Impossible, and the next job we did was a stills photographer, one person, out in the wilderness.
Yeah.
And you have to go, this person doesn't need 3 helicopters and a couple of jets and a couple of icebreakers. So you have to kind of scale back down and scale up. And so, but an understanding, you need to understand what the needs are to be able to plan for it, which is quite, and then what I think we are specialised at is then adapting things, like making sleds. And we went to a studio, which is shot in London, just out of London. Went to the studio in one of the pre-meetings, and I took a lot of the PolarX team with us, and we were with all the heads of department. So then we could talk to the makeup department and say, actually, your makeup that's water-based will freeze. You have to have alcohol-based makeup. So discuss all that stuff and discuss how they can transport their equipment. Basically, we talk to the visual effects people, how we're going to mark for visual effects afterwards. The special effects is always a big one in a blockbuster Hollywood film. How much special effects, how many things we're going to blow up, how many things we're going to burn, and how we're going to do this, especially when we're operating at minus 20 or minus 30 or minus 40.
Yeah.
So, and the good thing with that is in the pre-planning, which happened way before your location scout, we were already in the studios with the heads of department and the people in each department saying, okay, you want to move that piece of equipment, we have to build a sled, for example, or we have to design something. So you'll see a lot of our Kamatuk, which is a Canadian dog sled. But we took a Kamatuk design and made, I think it was 9 or 10 Kamatuk snowmobile sleds, which were extra big. And you never build one like it, but they're made as basically a fog machine. So we could do a line of them moving and create this fog scenes going across the ice.
Oh, so you had a fog machine out there. Yeah. Did you also have light and...
lighting systems. And
lighting systems.
You know, so we made a lighting rack, which would normally maybe put on a truck, but we put that on a sled, of course, and which was, light up the whole Arctic. And lighting one of the sets, which we had to light up a lot of communication antennas, and you know, that also becomes how much cable run, how much melt when you put power through cables. It creates energy and heat, which then melts down into the snow. And then you have to think that if you're shooting for a couple of days and you've got kilometers and kilometers and kilometers of cables, and they all melt a little bit down in the snow, it gets a bit cold, how do you get the cables out? So we normally run the cables above snow, above ground by putting, but that would be in shot. So we had to kind of run an insulation first so we could put the cables on the insulation and snow over, so we knew we could get the cables up without having to wait till the summer melt to get the cables up, because you can't stand there with an axe axing the ice away because you axe the cable.
And now that kind of starts to explain the amount of containers,
your equipment, and it's all, you know, we tried to be, in this case with Mission Impossible and the studio being very willing to listen to advice, also to reduce the size. Even though we were a massive operation and you feel it was massive compared to their normal size of working, we were probably about a third of the people. So I actually had the job, which I think was a great job, was to cut off the list. No, they're not going. No, we don't need those. We don't need those, to bring the size down. Mostly because of course, it's a cost saving, but it wasn't because of that. It was purely because we don't want to have too big of an environmental footprint. So if we can say, okay, we can do this with local people and we can bring the crews down. It's like a lot of the guys at PolarX who you know, we're multitasking. So in the construction period, when we're building the sets, we were all carpenters helping to build the sets, so we could bring down the environmental kind of footprint that we would leave behind by making this film. That was quite important for me not to come in with the full army and so many people, to reduce it as much as possible without actually affecting the quality of what we're filming and the safety, of course.
Yeah.
So.
And Jason, where does the visual look of the set come from? Like, how do you decide that? Or
that's a kind of a working group, mostly between the art director of the film and the director of the film, and also director of photography, of course. But the art director is working with the director the whole time on the look and the vision of the film. And then, this is going back to pre location scouting, when we're just looking at look and we're sending a lot of photos and ideas. So one of the main set builds we had, which was to reconstruct the building face, was actually we're in Longyearbyen, and Longyearbyen was first a coal mine in town, and across the bay from where we are was called Avon City. And there's still 5-6 buildings from 1910, 1920 period from Avon City that are now used. Some of them are just cultural remains, and some of them inside are used as cabins for locals. And one of those is called the manager's house.
Yeah.
And it's a lot smaller than the set we built, but they love the look of that.
Yeah.
And we could have shot there, but we needed to blow it up. And I asked the owner if he would mind if we blew up his cabin. He didn't like the idea. So we, of course, so we had to reconstruct it. So we scanned that whole building inside and out, totally scanned it, 3D the whole building, made up models. They scaled up to make it a bit bigger, and then we built the exterior of the set on the top of the mountains opposite us here.
You showed me a photo of a wooden house, cabin. That you built that from ground up.
From ground up.
I thought it was an existing. It looked so old. And
it looks so real.
Amazing.
So actually at Avon City, where you've been across the bay, is where the original is.
Yeah.
And we copied it, but we actually scaled it up in size by a third bigger, because they wanted it to look a bit bigger.
Yeah.
And we reconstructed it on the main location. And we also reconstructed the interiors in the studio in Longcross in London.
Yeah.
So, and because it gets blown up in fires, it's all built in the studio of fire resistant materials.
Yeah.
So even though it looks like there's a bookcase with Svalbard Arctic books and there's maps and everything is a reconstruction of photography we've done.
Impressive.
So the props department, which makes all the the glass on the table, the book on the bookshelf, they had to make all those props out of fire-resistant material, and they look real. And then when that was in the studio, and of course in the studio the exteriors don't exist, it's just the entryway. Yeah. Because once you enter, then you're inside doing the interiors. And the exteriors was built on location here.
Yeah. Impressive.
It's a lot of work, I think we were roughly about 40 carpenters for a month in the pitch dark in the middle of winter here building. So before you were up here in that period in December, January. Yeah. Working throughout the pitch dark, -20 under head torches, building that, and also having to build it so we didn't have to shoot the interiors, we're only shooting exteriors. Yeah. My worry was it all blown away because they used to building sets, so we actually put the shipping containers, a lot of the material, we brought up the material, so we planned it from many months before in the planning stage, in the construction period, that we would have all the materials for the construction inside the shipping containers, but we would lift the shipping containers onto the ice where we wanted them and then build around them, but the weight of the shipping containers would be basically our anchor so the whole set didn't disappear. And we finished the set not very long, it was only literally about 3-4 days before shooting. We were so delayed on building the set. Yeah. And then those 3-4 days we got a total storm. They blew down equipment, I guess the funniest thing was it was lucky no one was in the toilets, because one of the toilet blocks went to the other side of the island group. Whoa. And so the first question was, is anyone in that toilet? So
it was missing.
It was missing the toilet, and lifted in the air and pulverized into pieces. Whoa. And it was one of these portaloos that you use at all festivals, but for like 6 people. So totally destroyed. And of course the feeling when going up to look at the set to see if it still stood after the beautiful thing was the snowdrift and everything. I put this beautiful snowdrift and made the set look perfect.
Oh, like fresh.
Yeah, fresh,
Yeah.
perfect snowdrift. So that was good, but it was a bit of a strange feeling just driving there on a snowmobile going like, please be there, please be there.
That would have been a catastrophe.
Yeah, if it had, there's no way we could have built it quickly.
So that was basically, I thought it was a cabin that you found and you could use.
Yeah, and often we do use cabins we can use, but often, like for interiors, you need to take the walls away to get the cameras in. You can't film in a confined space, so you need to rebuild it anyway. Prop department and art department in feature films is one of my favourite things, even though I'm so used to working with cameras and film. I actually love the creative side of it, and I was running around a year before you come up here and taking pictures of a few old cabins and old radio, the old Danish sailor radios, and take a picture of those. And this is the type of radio we'd use, and
to make it as real as possible. Nice.
So and then you look at what they've done. You go, I took photos of inside the set in London and showed people on Svalbard, and they were going, "Whose cabin's that?" Because it looks so real. It's really amazing. It's one of my favourite things. And on Mission Impossible, we had a wonderful art department and prop department, so we got along with them really well. And we were finding props, and they were wishing to send certain things up from England to here, when I was like, listen, we've got them here, you don't need to send them. So we got rusty barrels with fuel in it and no fuel, old fuel barrels, you don't need send an old fuel barrel to the Arctic. We got plenty of those. So I like that creative side of the art department. So nice.
I saw on one of the photographs there was like a big glacier, and then you had kind of two camps, or there were a huge group of things, and what was all that?
So it was actually the filming location, but further out, about 15 kilometres away at the ice edge, we actually had the 3 ships parked at the ice edge. So that's our hotel and main units and offices and production offices on those 3 ships. And they're moored to the ice, tied to the ice. So they're basically what you'd call a studio if you're in Hollywood. That's your studio there. But we're shooting on location, so we need to then move to location. And when the distances are so great, we need to have food, toilets, safety, medical, everything you could imagine to service a couple of hundred people. So that's why we had built that advanced camp, which is moving each day nearly. So you build it up during the night, so you have your night crew building that at night, shoot the next day and maybe shoot another day, or maybe move. The other one that looks like a camp is actually the shooting location. And that big amount of people there is everyone that's needed actually on that scene for shooting. And then you have the bigger camp, which is servicing the shooting location. Then you have the home base.
And that is, we made a video together some years ago with your ice train and the editing facilities and all that stuff, snowmobile garage. So the office, I would say the studio is basically that with editing facilities
and we have, in this film, it's not normal, we actually have an editor to be making sure you can't do a pickup shot afterwards because we're shooting out on the ice. So if you miss a shot, you can't just go back in the studio and pick it up. So you have to make sure you're not missing the shots anywhere. So in this case, we're doing a lot of post-processing on location, which is not always normal, but we were doing it here. And so we could, normally you would quality control that there was no technical issues, but here we're actually making sure we've got the storyline. We're not missing a shot. And that's the whole ice train and all the tents and blow-up tents, and it's a lot. It's a lot of equipment, and that all needs to be powered and heated, lighted inside because it's dark inside. All the supply tents and that, we need to have heating for equipment, for drones. We have to have workshops for fixing stuff that's broken down, camera equipment. We have to, of course, we have costume just stored for change of costume in scenes. We have most of this on the main body which is a studio on the ship.
Yeah.
And then on a daily basis, we're taking out what's on the call sheet for the day, which is
Yeah.
a lot of stuff.
Yeah, and what we don't see when we are looking on the footage, like we can see, containers, people on snowmobiles and dresses, but we just have to remember that the moment people get out of their warm ice train or tent, they are exposed to the elements.
Yeah, they step out into, here was 30 Celsius below, so they're stepping out in the cold, and it's also often people that are not used to working in these environments. People adapt very quickly.
Yeah.
People are very scared beforehand.
Yeah.
I think they find it easier than they imagine. Sometimes they even often say the cold's so much easier than extreme heat because you can just dress for it. But, you also have to have like the safety to be able to pull out. We're on that advanced location there, when the location nearby is a servicing area, if you want to call it that, with everything for food, toilets, everything. And we're on the frozen ocean, which can break up. So we need to be able to evacuate people. And if we get a storm, get people out quite quick. So we're always having a plan, like if the ice is breaking up, we need to get people off it first. Then we have to get equipment onto fast ice or shore. Or if it's just a weather change, how do we leave the equipment, and how do we get a couple of hundred people back to safety? They're not in direct danger, but by the time you can move a couple of hundred people, the weather could have changed drastically.
Yeah. And also when I look at some of the pictures and some of the footage you showed me, I see things are lined up. I could imagine if I was there, regardless if I have Arctic experience or not, I would feel more safe when things are looking like that. Because,
I think you're completely right. If somebody steps onto a location and everything is systemized, lined up, thought through, it gives them an ease of feeling looked after, safe. They don't question. They're not. It is a very good point. I haven't thought about that before, actually, because that's just the way we operate at PolarX. Everything has to be lined up. It's partly being control of everything. We have, you see the size, the amount of equipment, 300 people in full winter clothing. And if everyone loses their boots and their gloves and misplaces it, and that's why we have a system on all clothing for everyone, so no one can mess up what clothes is their clothes. And if you don't have the system, it just collapses completely. And which, working with such a big operation, it's also a cost effective way to work. You just do not, if everyone is 10 minutes late for every scene, you can imagine the cost involved and the overrun of time. So, for such a big operation in such extreme environments, we were actually ahead of schedule on Svalbard shooting Mission Impossible, which is pretty amazing that we could be ahead of schedule. And scheduling it is just so difficult because you never know how long things are going to take, how difficult it's going to be, what the weather's going to do, what the scene changes are because of light changes. There's so many things to schedule into how to shoot it. But what we always have to be ready is, when the actors are ready, when the cameras are ready, they can't be waiting for us. We have to wait for them the whole time. And the way about doing that is having everything lined up. And so on that location, you see the cars on that location, you see the size of everything, and then you actually, often for drone shot, it just looks like a bit of stuff, and you actually see somebody walk in between it, and you see there's literally so much equipment lined up there, and everything's in windy, snowy conditions being blown down. So, we want to place that out. We also have to sit and think about wind drift, drifting snow, because if you put it the wrong way, everything will be covered in snow in the first storm. So luckily, we know the locations. We could say, okay, the wind's going to come from that direction. We have to put it like this, and snowdrift will be that side, and we'll keep everything clear. If not, you'll have 100 people shoveling snow non-stop around the clock. Because, the nature, you never fight nature. Nature always wins. So, and actually up there we did quite well on snowdrift. We were quite lucky, but, it's interesting to see the immense size of it. And quite a few hundred people that have to be fed, and they have to be kept warm, and they have to have somewhere to dry everything, and they have to have all their equipment, and they have to service the equipment. So it's hopefully in these images we'll be able to see the size of the operation.
Yeah, I think it looks massive. Yeah. So Jason, would you be willing to share some of the challenging moments that you found challenging on the operation?
Mission Impossible.
Yeah.
The final reckoning. I mean, one of the challenges is always working with something that's not mathematical or physical, but it's storytelling.
Yeah.
Is to get the decisions made early enough. It's because always a discussion and it doesn't become a decision. So you're discussing this scene, should they do this, and should they this in a Hollywood film that's very much about the action. This is an action film, and then all of a sudden you're going that direction, and the enemy is coming that way, and they're going to get away with a plane. No, next day it's a dog sled. No, it's a snowmobile, and it's always changing. And the biggest challenge for me is just like locking that decision.
Yeah.
That it's going to be shot in that time of year, that type of scenes. We're going to have a dog sled, and just making the decisions.
Yeah.
And that's strangely, because we've done it for so long. We're so used to everything that everyone worries about. I go, that's not a problem. I just need a decision.
Yeah.
So I've got time to make the decisions on how to do it.
Yeah.
So you do a decision on the editorial, and then or the storytelling script, and then to work the logistics around that, you can't start making final preparations until you know that.
Oh, that makes sense.
So and also shooting some of these major scenes, which were all sea ice based and submarines under the ice and the frozen ocean basically.
Yeah.
The frozen ocean is dynamic.
Yeah.
It's changing as the air temperature changes, as the water changes, as the storms come. So you're actually on we call it the Arctic Ocean, we call it the devil's dance floor, because it's always changing.
Yeah.
And it makes it so hard. You can't just say, this location, we put a stake in the ground and that's where we're filming this, because it's going to be different the next day.
Yeah.
So that's the challenge of the nature, and the challenge of, it doesn't have to be a major film production, it all can be a small production, or just a single person is making the decisions, so then you can move forward early enough.
Yeah. And what about then your best memories or best moments from filming the Mission Impossible?
So the best moments would be, I guess there would be two best moments actually.
Yeah.
And of course in something like this, there's some, and this size and this amount of years of planning and discussion, there's a lot of good moments, there's a lot of challenges, there's a lot of really, really not good fun moments of stress, incredible stress levels.
So you didn't get 8 hours every night?
You were here for part of it, it was 4 hours was a long night in bed. I think I was doing at least 20-hour days every single day for 5 months, of the actual pre-building, shooting, wrapping. It's, you have to work in the industry to realise how hard it can be with working, and that I don't agree with long hours in the film industry, but as the leader of everything and me being the decision maker on pretty much everything, then I have no choice. But we've got an amazing team. While we're rolling, it went super smooth. We shot on schedule, ahead of schedule in the end, and we had no damages or no injuries to anybody. The most important thing, firstly. We shot on schedule, actually ahead of schedule, and we had no damages to any equipment at all in the bigger picture. I think we lost one dive belt through the ice at the bottom of the ocean. No, I mean, it was
acceptable.
Yeah, it was acceptable.
Yeah.
It was nothing for the size of it. But to the best moments, I'd have to split them into probably two best moments. And one of them was when we're doing a lot of aerial work, aviation work, and my hobby is flying. So I mean, hobby since I was a young boy, flying aircraft. I come from Australia and I love flying. So the aerial unit, I didn't get as much time to be with the aerial unit, which is just doing the air to air and the aerial filming of the hero planes. I wanted to be with him every day for all the shots, but I got told by my boss that you are not going to be there all the time. So a few times I snacked off, and one day I snacked off, and it was wheels up at 3:30 in the morning because 24-hour light for the light.
Yeah.
So at about 3 o'clock in the morning, we're walking across the tarmac to a Basler, which is a converted DC3, which is all wrapped in all the beautiful colour ready for the film.
Oh.
And at the same time, we've got chase planes with the cameras on the outside of the plane that are high-speed planes to chase us, to film us.
Yeah.
And that feeling of just kind of walking on the mission for the aerial shots and just walking across the tarmac at 3 o'clock in the morning in -20, freezing cold, but beautiful blue skies and clear skies, and we taxi out for the takeoff, and all the aircraft say to the tower, and this is a little Svalbard, they don't get many takeoffs where you take off 1 or 2 or 3 aircraft at the same time.
Yeah.
Normally one aircraft takes off, and so the guys go on the radio and ask the one person in the tower for formation takeoff.
Yeah.
And you hear the operator in the tower. Yeah, he nearly jumps out of the tower watching permission granted.
Yeah.
And we take off and do a Top Gun past the tower with all these aircraft.
Nice.
Yeah, it was such a nice morning, and the sun was just coming up over Svalbard, and we do a flyby by the tower with all these aircraft, and then that whole day I had to pinch myself.
Yeah.
And we did a lot of air-to-air work, and I was sitting in the Hero plane, and we're coordinating between where to fly, where to go between mountains, where to make it look the most dramatic.
Yeah.
And you forget you think you're in the film.
Yeah.
You're in Mission Impossible, sitting in the plane, and you're flying very close between the mountains. Okay, a lot of people would think it's a bit crazy, but it's pre-planned. We've had pre-briefings a day before this. We have post-briefing or debriefing when we're finished, and working with the world's best aerial operators was amazing. And sometimes you look out the window and see the chase planes with the cameras on right up next to you and go, whoa, that's pretty close. So
maybe one of these short moments where you actually could forget that you're the head of all the logistics and you could just enjoy the moment.
There was no cellular phone reception. I was all gone. No one could catch me. I must admit, when we landed that night mission, we were actually moving from the local filming to the remote filming.
Okay.
So we were moving out onto the ships and out to the ice, and I think I went 2 days without even seeing a pillow, but it was worth it for the aerial. And the other best moment, I guess, would be working with the cast and crew. We had an amazing cast and we had amazing crew. And this being the last in the franchise of the missions, a lot of people worked together for many, many years. It's been going on for a long time. I can't remember how many years, but people have been working decades together, and it was such a nice feeling personally, not on the production side or the business side of it. It's a personal feeling because it is my home where we're filming. The locations are my home.
Yeah.
It is my back garden.
Yeah.
And it's such a nice feeling to have these people who, when you work so intensely, so close, do become friends.
Yeah.
And that they are blown away by the location, and they are saying to you, well, of all the locations we've filmed in the whole world, this is the most special.
Oh,
and
nice.
Such a beautiful feeling. And, working with the cast who were, on set for their pieces to camera, but some of the cast come to me and asked if it was possible to cancel their transport out and they could stay on set and use like your shot, we've wrapped, we're finished with you and go home. And they go, we're not missing this experience. We'd like to stay if we can stay.
Oh, that's nice.
And they're asking me if they can stay, and I was like, of course, I'd love you to stay. And this is my home. I'm so proud of it. And with the lead actor, with Tom Cruise, also, staying on and experiencing Svalbard and experience the high Arctic.
Oh, just generally liking it so
liking
much.
it and being interested in it. It makes the job so much easier when you have the lead cast asking you every day, can we go on a private trip because he's loving the experience.
Yeah.
It just makes it so much easier.
Yeah,
It
but
makes it
also
enjoyable.
makes sense.
Yeah.
Because this, like, I mean, it's easy to fall in love with Svalbard. It's amazing.
And I think it's easy to fall in love with a lot of the polar regions, the high Arctic, the Antarctic. I often wonder why. I just think it's so removed from the rest of the planet, from the equator zone around where people live and where we should live. To be brutally honest, humans should not live in the polar regions.
No.
We're not made, and we're not to live in these extreme conditions. So I think for me, doing all the films, whether it's a BBC documentary or whether it's a Hollywood film, it always falls back to the cast and crew, the people you're working with, their experience and watching their experience and knowing that to them, what is daily life for you and daily filming and daily work for them is a lifetime experience.
Yeah.
Really is a lifetime experience for the cast and crew who get to experience such a location. It's not a day at work, it's a lifetime experience.
Yeah, and I remembered when I had to go home for an assignment at that point, but I remember some of the PolarX crew here, they said, oh, you should stay, you have to come up and see, you know, this with the radars and stuff, radars, and I was like,
it's a shame you had to leave.
Yeah, but anyway.
And we were also keeping it a lot under wraps, of course, because
you
know, there's a lot of people interested in it, so it's a bit hard to keep such a big operation under wraps, and after a while it kind of took over the whole village. And in a while it was impossible to keep it quiet.
I could imagine
I kept it quiet for a couple of years, the whole planning stage.
I mean, in my little town in Denmark, if someone said, oh, by the way, Tom Cruise is on the other side of that forest, I reckon there will be a person or two sneaking out there.
Exactly. The good thing on Svalbard is you can disappear in the middle of nowhere. And you can hide behind a hoodie and a snowmobile suit.
Yeah, that's right. That's right, Jason.
But it was, it's always the most kind of moving moments are always that one that is not professionalism, it's not business, it's not the editorial you're trying to do, it's the personal moments with the crews. And because I think if you work together in a studio in Los Angeles or London or wherever in the world, you're in a studio, you go to work like a normal job and you go home. You're not exactly sure. And we saw this in Mission Impossible when people actually talk to each other and realize they'd worked on the same film franchise for a couple of decades but never really knew who the other person was. And here they're playing cards together, chatting together and experiencing it together. So it really is the nicest thing about making these films where you bring people to these actually off the beaten track but wilderness locations that they get a personal experience out of it.
Yeah. I'm speaking to Jason here now, and the film hasn't yet been released, so I haven't seen it. And you have probably seen part of it, but you can't really tell a whole lot. But I have to say, I'm so excited after speaking with Jason, after hearing these things, after getting access to some of the behind-the-scene footage. Like, I'm really excited for a film to come out, but this one I just have to watch. I have to make my own popcorns, a cup of coffee at home or a cold beer, and just watch the movie and see if I can recognize some of the things from this behind-the-scene footage. And if you want to see some of the videos I've done with Jason, I will link to them in the description. There's one here from PolarX facilities, the PolarX studios, where we go through a lot of the equipment. There's also the video from that location scout. And then I just want to say thank you, Jason, for inviting me in again.
It's always a pleasure to have you.
Looking forward to seeing you again when I return to Svalbard. And you stay safe, and until next time, see you out there.